Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's class on endocrinology. Today's topic is physiology of anterior pituitary hormones as per the CBME curriculum. So here is Mr. He Ping Ping, all of 2 feet 5 inches, trying to have a glance at Mr. Sultan Hussain, who is 8 feet 1 inch tall. In this figure, you can see a normally heighted lady who is who is standing beside a tall statured man, whereas on the left side we can see a dwarf person. So this is a comparative picture of how the heights vary. And on this right side of the panel, you can see a family of dwarfs who are photographed with a normally heighted doctor. So I'm sure with this pics, you have understood that today's class is all about growth and how it can be normal or abnormal, more or less. So let's get started with today's class. So the objectives for today's class include under the competency 8.2, list the hormones secreted by anterior pituitary, describe the actions and regulation of growth hormone, and list the clinical features with physiological basis for each of them, that is gigantism, acromegaly, and dwarfism. So these are our objectives for today. So let's get started. Beginning with the hormones of the anterior pituitary, you already know that there are 6 hormones that are released from the anterior pituitary in response to the stimulus that it receives from the hypothalamus in the form of releasing and inhibiting hormones. The first hormone is there are several different types of cells in the anterior pituitary, and each of them give rise to certain hormones. So the first one, the thyrotropes, produce thyroid stimulating hormone TSH or thyrotropin. The second, corticotropes, produce adrenocorticotropic hormone, that is ACTH or corticotropin. Third, the gonadotropes in the anterior pituitary produce follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, that is FSH and LH, which are together called as the gonadotropins. The fifth hormone is the growth hormone produced from somatotropes. The lactotropes produce another hormone called prolactin. So, in this way, 6 different hormones are produced from the anterior pituitary. Histologically, we may not call them as thyrotropes or corticotropes like this, but we call them as acidophils, basophils, chromophils, based on their staining properties. Okay, but physiologically, this is the nomenclature that we use. So these are the 6 hormones of the anterior pituitary. We have seen this diagram before, the top panel showing all the releasing and inhibitory hormones of the hypothalamus. Now we are here in the second panel where the anterior pituitary is producing the hormones, 6 hormones. These are all tropic hormones. Why we use the word tropic? They are tropic means they are stimulating the growth of the some other endocrine gland. So that's the word tropic. So corticotropin, thyrotropin, like this the words are used, gonadotropin. So like ACTH will be tropic on adrenal cortex. It not only stimulates some other hormones there, but it will also help in the growth of that particular endocrine gland. Okay, so these are the anterior pituitary hormones. Today we will learn more in detail about the growth hormone. Rest of the hormones, usually when we are learning about the adrenocortical hormones, we will learn about ACTH. So corresponding hormones we are going to learn during those when we are learning about those hormones. hormones. Okay, so today's class is more about the growth hormone. So coming to what we call it as human growth hormone. Why this nomenclature human growth hormone? The amino acid sequencing is a little different for the humans, the monkeys, or the other animals. So they are very specific to the species. That's why we use the word human growth hormone. So as we learned before, the source is from the somatotropes, that is the acidophils in the anterior pituitary. They are producing the growth hormone. In response to the releasing and inhibiting hormones, they are produced. Coming to the chemical nature, they are polypeptide in nature, made up of 195 amino acids. Synthesis, storage, and release of growth hormone. So all this is happening in the anterior pituitary. And the normal plasma level is in adults, you can see that it is 2 to 4 nanogram per ml, whereas in children it is little higher at 5 to 8 nanogram per ml. Also, their biological life is 6 to 20 minutes. The growth hormone is released in spurts. It's not continuously released, but in spurts, sporadically or episodically, every 20 to 30 minutes, there is a rise and again fall. And also during the night, it is found that after 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours after the person goes into deep sleep, the peak is reached. Okay, what we call it as the nocturnal peak. So that's why the sleep is so important, we say in children. That's because of the growth hormone, which is produced more during the night. So again, I was telling about the specificity of the human growth hormone. So human growth hormone is active only in humans. So this is a picture depicting the episodic nature of growth hormone. So if this is the time, 24-hour time, starting from 8 a.m. in the morning to 8 a.m. in the next day. And this is the growth hormone on the y-axis. We can see that there are spurts of release of the growth hormone. We can see that after exercise, strenuous exercise, there is a spurt. And in the sleep also, there is a peak, nocturnal peak. Okay, so this is how the growth hormone is produced in spurts. Next, transport. About 50% of the growth hormone is transported in the bound form. So whenever a hormone is in the bound form, it will be inactive. And when it is released from it, it becomes active. So it is usually acts like a reserve when some amount of growth hormone is in, or any hormone is in the form of bound form. Okay, it acts like a reserve. As and when it is released, more and more action is possible. Coming to the mechanism of action, we saw that it is a peptide hormone. So peptide hormones are acting as on the surface receptors. Okay. I hope you remember learning something about the tyrosine kinase receptors. We had learned that it is more present or seen especially in insulin and in growth hormone. So that is how the mechanism of action works here. So the growth hormone receptor, which is present on the target cell, it is very similar to the intracellular tyrosine kinase. Okay, we call it as JAK2 pathway, intracellular tyrosine kinase. So what was happening when the binding of the growth hormone to the receptor results in dimerization? So if you see this picture, this is something similar. We had a in intracellular tyrosine kinase receptor also, one extracellular portion, transmembrane portion, intracellular portion, all this together acts both as a receptor as well as the next activated proteins, everything is formed here only. So when the growth hormone binds to the receptor, growth hormone receptor, that first causes dimerization of the growth hormone receptor. Once there is dimerization, it causes phosphorylation at the intracellular part. And this causes phosphorylation of other substrates, which bring about the biological response. Okay, so this is the mechanism of action of growth hormone. But here in growth hormone, most important thing that we need to learn here is more about the actions of growth hormone and about the regulation of growth. So let's move towards the actions of growth hormone. A few salient points we will know. Afterwards, we will list out the actions. So the growth hormone, along with thyroid hormones, androgens, estrogens, and insulin, is responsible for growth. So as the name suggests, growth hormone, of course, is required for growth, but it's not the only hormone that causes growth. There are others. Okay. And one more important thing is the growth hormone mediates its actions both directly as well as indirectly. What do you mean indirectly? Indirectly through the somatomedins or growth factors. Okay. So directly and indirectly through growth factors. When growth hormone acts on liver, kidney, muscles, and some other viscera, they produce insulin-like growth factor 1, what we call as IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1 or somatomedin C. So some actions of growth hormone are directly by growth hormone by itself, and some are mediated through this insulin-like growth factor 1. Okay? So let's see in little bit in detail about what is IGF-1. Because sometimes you need to know about the different growth factors that are acting also. Okay, so this is a picture which showing that growth hormone, once it goes to the liver and other viscera, it is producing IGF-1 and that will again have further action. So coming to the somatomedin C or IGF-1, please be very cautious about the names that you encounter because some of them are very, very similar to each other, but they mean different things. But sometimes some things are very different, but they mean the same things. Okay, so this is somatomedin C, insulin IGF-1. So it's a peptide produced by liver and kidney and some other viscera in response to growth hormone. The normal level is 10 to 700 nanogram per ml. And this level goes on increasing and it is at a higher level during the childhood. And the most important thing is this will peak at puberty. That is a growth spurt which occurs at puberty is mainly because of this IGF-1. So that's very important. So what are its actions? IGF-1, basically it is having important action on growth of the linear growth. So all that is required for growth, all those actions are there with the IGF-1. So it incorporates sulfates into the cartilage. It increases the DNA and RNA synthesis and so cell proliferation and increases the collagen formation. So these are all the some of the basic things at the cellular level, molecular level that is happening so that it helps in growth. So can you see this picture? So these are pygmies of Africa. You might have heard about them long before in your social studies. But why are these Africans, pygmies, so short stature? You can see a man here who is normally heighted, and these are short stature. So what is the cause for this dwarfism? The main reason for their dwarfism is the somatomedin C. They have normal growth hormone levels, but the problem lies in the IGF-1, which is less and more so that the pubertal peak which has to occur does not occur in them. That's the reason they remain dwarf. So this is a condition that is caused due to the deficiency of IGF-1. So let's move on to the okay, before we move to the other actions, let's see some other growth factors. Is IGF-1 is the only growth factor that is there in our body? It's not so. There are many other growth factors which mediate growth, like multiplication stimulating activity, MSA, is also called as IGF-2. Then nerve growth factor, NGF, epidermal growth factor. The name itself tells where it is important. Okay, so the nerve growth factor, epidermal growth factor, we have the ovarian growth factor, fibroblast growth factor, very important in healing when we have wounds. So these are the several growth factors which are also there and help in the different types of growth. Coming to the actions of the growth hormone. So the first and foremost one is on growth of skeleton, that means bone, skeletal muscle and viscera. Second, on metabolism. It has effect on all the three metabolisms, carbohydrate, protein, fat, and also on electrolytes. The minor functions of growth hormone, these two are the major functions. It is related to growth and it is related to all the metabolisms. The minor ones are on milk production. It causes lactogenic effects. On erythropoiesis, increases erythropoiesis. On lymphopoiesis and on gonads. So these are some of the minor actions of the growth hormone, the last four. Coming to the first one, as we were telling you before, that the growth hormone has its effect on the target organs either directly, that is the growth hormone itself acts, or indirectly via the IGF-1. So let's in the beginning start with the direct effects of growth hormone. So the first one on skeletal and cartilage growth. This is the major function of the growth hormone. The growth hormone promotes skeletal growth both linearly, that is lengthwise, and also thickness. The second function, most important, is its action on viscera and skeletal muscle. So the viscera and skeletal muscle growth is also promoted by the growth hormone by two factors or two ways. One is hyperplasia. You know that hyperplasia means increase in the number of cells. Okay. And also hypertrophy. That means increase in the size of each cell. So they cause both increase in the number of cells and size of cells, and thus increase the size of viscera and the muscle. So this is how the growth hormone either acts alone on the skeletal and the muscles and the viscera, or it acts via the IGF-1. After the growth, the next important effect is on the metabolisms. So starting with the protein metabolism, it is anabolic. Anabolic means it promotes protein synthesis. Okay, so the protein is made, it is not degraded. If it is degraded, it would be called catabolic. Here it is anabolic. So since it is anabolic, it produces a positive nitrogen and phosphorus balance in the body. It promotes all steps of protein synthesis. It decreases blood urea nitrogen. So what is this blood urea nitrogen? When the protein is catabolized in the body, this urea and nitrogen will increase in the blood. But since it is not catabolized, definitely if we are seeing this, this is an indicator of finding out whether there is protein catabolism or not. So this will be definitely less. Decreased one and amino acid levels. So if there are again amino acid level will increase where there is catabolism. If it is broken down, the amino acid level will increase. But here all the amino acid whatever is available is used up for the synthesis of new proteins. So amino acid levels are going to decrease. So the main effect we have to remember, it is about protein synthesis. It is anabolic. Growth hormone is anabolic. On fats, it promotes lipolysis. Okay, so lipolysis means what we call, use the word ketogenic. It is ketogenic because when there is lipolysis, breakdown of fats, free fatty acids are increased, and this free fatty acids can be converted into ketones, making it an ideal candidate to promote ketogenesis. Okay, ketogenic. So this is how the growth hormone, we are discussing the direct functions. So growth hormone directly increases protein storage. It causes lipolysis. Okay. So this particular, indirectly also this is true. That is through IGF, that we will study it little later. So here we have seen about protein is made anabolic and fat is lysed, lipolysis. Next, on carbohydrate metabolism. Okay. So on carbohydrate metabolism, remember that this is diabetogenic. What do we mean by diabetogenic? Diabetes means is a condition where blood glucose level is increased. So carbohydrate, the effect of growth hormone on the body is to increase the blood glucose level. So how does it increase the blood glucose level? So when we learn about the glucose metabolism and all that, we have to learn how it is increased, how it is decreased. This is one of the hormones. We will learn later that insulin is one hormone which is going to decrease the blood glucose level, but growth hormone is one of those which are going to increase the blood glucose level. So how is it going to increase the blood glucose level? What is the mechanism? Let's see. The first mechanism is by decreasing peripheral utilization of glucose. So what do we mean by this? So whenever we take food, the food is absorbed and glucose is produced and the blood glucose level will increase. So when there are blood glucose levels are high, the glucose is used up by the peripheral organs. Majorly that is the muscle. So if the glucose enters into the muscle, and that is called as peripheral utilization. If it is used up, then the glucose level will come down. But what is this growth hormone doing? It is preventing. It is decreasing the peripheral utilization of glucose. That is how the glucose level will be more. So this is one mechanism, decreasing peripheral utilization of glucose. Is also called as anti-insulin action in muscle. Next method is how it increases glucose is by glycogenolysis. So we know glucose is stored in the liver and some other places as glycogen. So when glycogen is broken down, glucose is released, which increases the blood glucose level. So the second mechanism is by increasing glycogenolysis. The third mechanism for increasing the blood glucose level is by gluconeogenesis. What do we mean by gluconeogenesis? As the word say new, the glucose is formed from some other substrate other than the carbohydrate. So here what happens, what we saw, its action on the lipids was, there was lipolysis, free fatty acids had increased. So here the free fatty acids are converted to glucose and it increases the glucose level. So in these three mechanisms, the growth hormone increases the blood glucose level and hence it is diabetogenic. Coming to the electrolyte metabolism, positive nitrogen and phosphorus balance is there because protein synthesis is happening. In addition, it increases the calcium absorption. So this is the effect on the electrolyte metabolism. These were all the direct effects of growth hormone. Coming to indirect effects of growth hormone. which are similar or which are dissimilar to the direct effects. Let's see. So the action on skeletal and visceral growth is similar to that of direct effects. Okay, that means indirect effects means those mediated through the IGF-1, somatomedin C. So its action is similar on skeletal and visceral growth. Next, it is similar on protein metabolism. That means it is doing anabolism. But its effect on carbohydrate and lipid metabolism is opposite. That means it is not diabetogenic. It is not causing lipolysis. It's causing the reverse. But the only important thing we need to remember is this action is very, very minimal. So minimal that when we sum total of growth hormone action, when we see on carbohydrate and lipid, we need not bother about this action at all. We just have to remember that growth hormone is diabetogenic, ketogenic, lipolysis it is causing. So that's the ultimate effect that we see. This is action, anti-lipolytic and insulin-like action is very minimal. So one more thing we need to remember is that growth hormone and IGF-1 can act both in cooperation or they can act independently to stimulate the growth. Coming to the other actions which are of minor importance, growth hormone has lactogenic or mammogenic activity. That is, it promotes the milk secretion along with thyroxine and prolactin. On erythropoiesis, it stimulates the erythropoietin secretion from kidney and promotes erythropoiesis. And on the lymphocytes, it is having a very positive effect. It increases the growth of the lymphoid tissue and increases the lymphocytes. On the gonads, it has a stimulatory effect in both male and female gonads. In dwarf, these effect may not be found and hence the gonads may be smaller in size. So coming to the summary of growth hormone actions, remember there are growth related actions. Either it can act directly or it can act on liver and produce through IGF-1. It acts on the growth, skeletal growth. Extraskeletal growth means on the viscera and the muscle and promotes protein synthesis there. Whereas on the fat, it causes lipolysis. On the carbohydrate, it increases the glucose levels. So this is a summary of the growth hormone actions. Coming to the role of other hormones in growth. This picture is very useful in understanding the role of other hormones. The presence of thyroid hormone. The thyroid hormone has a permissive role for the action of growth hormone. Okay, that means thyroid hormone should be present for the growth hormone to do its action efficiently. So let's see role of other hormones. On the x-axis, we have from birth to up to age of 20 years, where we think that the maximum growth will be already completed by the age of 20. So thyroid hormones, you can see, they have maximum role to play from birth till 5 to 6 years of age. After that, their role in growth will slowly reduce. Whereas the growth hormone increases steadily in the early infancy and maintains a steady state for a long period, and there can be growth spurts at puberty, but the growth hormone itself does not spurt, but the IGF-1 spurts, so you can't see the spurt here, and slowly after puberty it becomes lesser. Coming to androgens and estrogens, their role is nil up to the beginning of the puberty. With the beginning of the puberty, it will start increasing, it will peak and then again come back to normal. So this is the role of different hormones at different age of an individual. Next, coming to what are the different, apart from the hormones, there are other factors also which cause growth, like the genetic factors, nutritional factors, and the health. All these are also important for the normal growth to occur. It's not that just because hormones are there, the rest of the things are unimportant or anything like that. And here, when we tell health, what we mean is when a person is healthy, the growth, nutrition is good, and he is not succumb to any chronic disease, only then the growth can occur. But any period when the person or a child is uh, into a chronic debilitating disease, there will be less growth during that period because all the energy is utilized towards the some other aspects, but it cannot be used. There is a catabolic kind of a condition whenever there is an illness, surgery, and all those things. Okay, so after this event, suppose the after that event is passed, there is something called as catch-up growth. So whatever is lost during that period, the person will able to make good for that. That is called as catch-up growth. So the different types of tissues in the body they, grow at different ages. So let's begin first by understanding the normal physical growth that we are able to see. That is the body and the visceral organs. So you can see that it has steeply, it goes up somewhat. There is a plateau and again raises up further during the, there is a going up during the puberty. So this is a sigmoid shaped curve for the body and the most visceral. Now, if you think about the brain, the max, there is very steep rise in the growth of the brain, the head, the neurons, everything here, especially higher in the early age. And later on, it almost plateaus. Okay. Whereas the lymphoid tissue, we can see that there is a peak actually during the early puberty, or early childhood and postpartum. That is the lymphoid tissue growth. Whereas to the reproductive organs, it remains almost stagnant until the beginning of the puberty, where it takes a peak after the onset of puberty and goes up. So it's not that the growth of all tissues are similar. They all have their own curves based on the hormonal influences and the very nature of the growth. So this is about the different types of growth. Coming to the regulation of growth hormone. The growth hormone, we have learned about the positive and the negative feedback mechanism. Here, the growth hormone is mainly regulated by the negative feedback mechanism. Hypothalamus releases two hormones, growth hormone releasing hormone and growth hormone inhibiting hormone. GHIH is also known by one more name, that is somatostatin. Okay. So these releasing and inhibiting hormones act on the anterior pituitary to regulate the release of growth hormone. So once growth hormone is released, it acts on the liver and it produces another tissues, of course, IGF-1. So the growth hormone itself can inhibit hypothalamus, that is a negative feedback, short loop negative feedback, or IGF-1, which is produced, will inhibit anterior pituitary, also inhibit hypothalamus. That means whenever they are produced in excess, they will inhibit their own release. That is known as the negative feedback mechanism. So these are the negative feedback mechanisms. Apart from this, the hypothalamus receives several stimulatory and inhibitory influences. So let's see few stimulatory and inhibitory influences on hypothalamus which can alter the release of growth hormone. So the stimulatory influences are, first one, most important, hypoglycemia, fasting, sleep, and exercise. So these are the stimulants for growth hormone. acting via the hypothalamus. Whereas the inhibitions that is coming to the hypothalamus is high glucose levels, free fatty acids, cortisol, growth hormone itself, and IGF-1. So all these are inhibiting the hypothalamus so that the growth hormone is not released. So this is the brief, short way of discussing the regulation of growth hormone. Next, coming to the applied aspect of growth hormone. So either the hormone may be secreted in excess, that is hypersecretion, or hyposecretion. So if the hormone, growth hormone, is excessively secreted in adults, okay, what do we mean by the term adults here? If it occurs after the fusion, epiphysis fusion, okay, we know all the long bones, at the ends of long bones, the growth is happening, linear growth. And once the epiphyseal closure occurs at that point, the person will no longer grow taller, or that bone can no longer linearly grow. So here, when we use the term adults and children, for children, we mean to say the before the closure of the epiphyseal closure, and for adults after the epiphyseal closure. So hypersecretion in adults causes acromegaly, and in children it causes gigantism. Whereas hyposecretion in adults has very less effect except for some general findings, whereas in children it can cause dwarfism. Okay, the different types we will see later. So first we will begin with what happens in hypersecretion. Okay, so this is the what happens with hypersecretion in childhood when it happens before the epiphyseal closure, the tall statured man. So due to hypersecretion of growth hormone before epiphyseal fusion, cause why it happens? Because of the acidophil tumor of the anterior pituitary gland. So these are the growth hormone producing somatotropes, acidophils. Coming to the clinical features, the persons are tall statured, height varying from 7 to 8 feet. What is more profoundly seen is the height of the limbs are much greater, and there is little imbalance between the uh, limb and trunk proportion. Okay, so we can see that with the limb and trunk proportion is abnormal due to the excess growth of the long bones. The viscera is also increased in size slightly. Their facial features are become coarse. Hyperglycemia. So we know that growth hormone is diabetogenic. So when excess secretion is there, it is going to cause hyperglycemia. The treatment for this is somatostatin, or growth hormone inhibiting hormone, should be given early in diagnosis. So when we delay, we cannot do anything. It should be diagnosed early and it should be given. Look at this picture. So this frame on the left side looks so nice with sharp features, the nose, the mandible, whereas here you can see very coarse features. So this is how the lady is transformed because of acromegaly. Let us see one more picture. This is a lady who was photographed between 1998, then 99, 2001, 2003, 2005. So here it is very quite obvious. This is the next year, 2006, just 15 days before the diagnosis. These are the coarse features, which we can see. So what is the reason behind all these things? The hand, this is the normal hand, and how over years, this is how it looks. This is due to the hypersecretion of the growth hormone in adults. So in adults, the stature does not increase, but there are some other features that happen, which we call it as acromegaly. Let's have a look at the things. So by definition, acro means peripheral, megaly is enlargement. So there is basically enlargement of the peripheral parts of our body, like the hands and the feet. It's a clinical condition due to hypersecretion of the growth hormone in adults after fusion of epiphysis. Cause again is the acidophil tumor of the pituitary. Here the clinical features, what we won't find is the tall stature will not be found because already there is fusion of the epiphysis and it's an adult. So there cannot be any further growth, linear growth. So what do you find is what we do find is the very different appearance, gorilla-like face with kyphosis or forward bending due to the growth of the vertebra. Okay, so this gorilla-like face is due to the enlarged bones in the face. There is overgrowth of bones of hands, feet, and face. So how does it? The mandibles, the molars, the nasal and orbital ridges, all of them are enlarged and there is protrusion of the lower jaw, what we call it as prognathism. Okay? So this whole species or the facial appearance that is seen in acromegaly is also called as acromegalic facies. Also, the hands and feet are broadened and thickened. So these are the very typical appearances in an acromegaly. In addition, there is visceromegaly, that is the viscera are increased in size. There is hyperglycemia because growth hormone is diabetogenic. We also learned what are the mechanisms by which growth hormone is diabetogenic, how it increases the glucose, decreases the peripheral utilization of glucose, increases gluconeogenesis, causes glycogenolysis. So all these are mechanisms why we find hyperglycemia. So it's not just enough to say there will be hyperglycemia. We should be able to tell the physiological basis for each one of them, why it happens, what is its normal action, and when it is increased or decreased, why the abnormality happens. Next, very typical feature that can be seen is bitemporal hemianopia. Okay, this is, I will try to explain to you with the next slide where I have a picture. Okay, so which is due to the compression of the optic chiasma by the growing tumor. So if we have not done the visual pathway yet, then you would not understand, but it is due to the compression of the optic chiasma, which is part of the visual pathway. Okay, because of the growing tumor, the tumor of the pituitary, in the anterior pituitary, that is pressing on the optic chiasma. Then there is increased thickness of skin and subcutaneous tissue. That's why it appears very rough and thickened, the entire skin. What is the treatment? Treatment is surgical removal of the tumor and somatostatin, that is GHIH, growth hormone, inhibiting hormone therapy can be given. Okay, let's see some more pictures. So here the acromegalic facies, what we are talking about, the broad nose, the thickened orbital ridges, the enlarged mandible, all these are visible. This is a diagram which you can actually draw, very simple. showing prognathism and acromegalic species. Okay. Then here I have the picture, bitemporal hemianopia. Hemianopia means hemi, half anopia. Absence of vision in half of the visual field. Okay, is hemianopia. Now, the visual field is divided into two parts. Nasal part, this is the nasal part, this is the nasal part, the whiter one. The shaded ones on the either side are called the temporal halves. So, in this acromegaly, we see because of the optic chiasma, the location where it is there, the lateral half of the vision is lost. What we call it as bitemporal hemianopia. There is prognathism and the vertebrae are some osteoarthritic changes can be seen because of the enlargement of the bones. There is gynecomastia is also a feature. Enlargement of the male breast is called as gynecomastia. And sometimes there may also be lactation. So here you can see the enlarged acromegaly. The peripheries are enlarged, the hands and the feet. Okay. So this is a very simple diagram which can be drawn, and also it will help you to remember the features of acromegaly. You shouldn't forget prognathism, hyperglycemia, the enlarged hands and feet, the visual defect. This is one more diagram to show the similar features. Okay. So on a CT or MRI, we may be able to find a tumor. There may be a visual defect. Growth hormone is measured, it will show high levels. Prominent suborbital ridge, broad nose, large nose, jaw, teeth, all separated or they are widened. Then galactose increased in the breast, gynecomastia, cardiomegaly, many viscera may be enlarged. There may be sexual dysfunction, peripheral neuropathy may be there. So these are the minor different other things. You remember the major ones, it will suffice. Then abnormal glucose tolerance test and higher glucose levels. Coming to the dwarfism. So dwarfism is a clinical condition due to hypofunction of the growth hormone in children. The cause or etiology is either the growth hormone releasing hormone from hypothalamus is decreased releasing hormone from hypothalamus, or the growth hormone itself is decreased in children. The growth hormone itself may be normal, but there may be decreased somatomedin levels. Okay, as we learned earlier, in African pygmies, the growth hormone is normal, but the peak that has to occur during puberty of somatomedins and IGF-1 is absent. Then we have something called Laron dwarfism. Here what happens is growth hormone is normal, IGF-1 is normal, but the target organs, that is the bone, the skeletal muscle, and other organs which are supposed to be under the influence of growth hormone, the growth hormone receptors are insensitive to growth hormone. So it is the Laron's dwarfism. There may be other causes apart from the growth hormone deficiency. Okay? The dwarfism that we are discussing right now is also called as pituitary dwarf. Okay, because it is due to deficiency of growth hormone. We have dwarf due to other causes like thyroid deficiency in children also causes dwarfism, hypothalamic lesion in children, or it can be also genetic. So these are the other causes of dwarfism. Later on, once we have finished all the other hormones like thyroid also, thyroid deficiency in children causes a different type of dwarf, what we call it as cretin dwarf. Okay, but the features are quite different. We may also have to compare and contrast pituitary dwarf with cretin dwarf, and that may be an important learning point. Okay, we will do it at a later stage. So here is a diagram which shows on the left side of the panel a normal 2-year-old child. Okay, this is a normal 2-year-old child. Whereas on the right end, we have a normal 8-year-old child. Okay, that's the height around 130 centimeters, normal 8-year-old child. Next, here we have the growth hormone dwarf or pituitary dwarf. Okay, he's called as the pituitary dwarf. What you can see is, you can see that they are of similar looking like the normal person. Only thing, their height is less. Okay, so this is the pituitary dwarf. Next, this dwarf is the hypothyroid dwarf. Okay, what we call it as the cretin dwarf. You can see this child is not only a dwarf, but it is chubby, and maybe some other findings are there which we will learn a little later. Okay, so there are, so our pituitary dwarf is almost just the height of a 2-year-old child at the age of 8 years. Whereas the rest of the things, we can't see much difference. The maturity is also seen on the face, not like this, the 2-year-old. Let's see what are the clinical features now. So in dwarfism, we see that the person is short-statured, dwarf due to stunted growth. The limb trunk proportion may be affected, or sometimes it may be normal also. The head disproportionately large. IQ is normal. This is very, very important. In the pituitary dwarf, IQ is not affected. The intelligence of the child is not affected. Sexual function is also normal most of the times. And visceral organs can be smaller. So these are the effects. This is how we may see the person with a big head, slightly normal sized thorax, but a shortened leg. Upper limb is also shorter, not extending below the upper 1/3 of the thigh. Okay, normally we can see the normally heighted person will have his hand that reaches up to the thigh. What's the treatment? The treatment depends on the cause, what is the reason for the dwarfism, and if it is a pituitary dwarf, in growth hormone deficiency, growth hormone injections are given. So that was about the today's class. So we are what all we learned today in the today's objectives was, we have listed all the hormones that are secreted by the anterior pituitary, the 6 hormones. We learned in detail about one of them, that is the growth hormone, its actions, direct actions, indirect actions, action on growth, and metabolism, all these things we have learned. We have also learned about the regulation of the growth hormone, which is basically by negative feedback mechanism. And lastly, we also learned about the applied aspects, listing the clinical features with physiological basis. This is most important, as I was trying to stress. For every feature that we are seeing, we are labeling, we should be able to identify what's the reason behind this clinical feature and what's the action of the hormone that is lying behind the presence of this particular clinical feature. Okay, so we learned about gigantism, acromegaly, and dwarfism. So this was today's class on growth hormone and anterior pituitary hormones. We will learn with some more case histories further in the next classes. Thank you.